second meeting of the Union Church Committee. It's August 3rd. We have a quorum. It looks like everybody is here except perhaps Candace. I passed out a agenda. Everybody has one? If you could just take a look for a moment at the committee charge and review that for yourself, that would be great.
Could I add something to the agenda?
You may.
Quickly, just about 2 minutes on, I talked to MDOT, and it'd take me about 2 minutes to tell you they haven't told me much.
Okay, sure, let's put that right after the Kopp brothers
Okay.
report. That's great, thank you, John. Okay, has everybody had a chance to take a look at the minutes from July 18th?
Move to accept.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
What, go ahead.
Well, I just had some questions.
Yeah, sure,
about it, and,
sure.
now I forget to see it. And I don't know if some of the things that we put in, are, my note was on the, when we were talking about the building and what's ordered, no, it was about the estimate, I guess, the.
Well, we can,
Yeah, I guess.
we can set this aside for a minute if you'd
No,
like.
that's all right, I'll just,
Are you sure?
yeah, I just a couple things I wasn't sure how, if the way it was worded is how it is,
Well, I want you to be comfortable.
one of them was that using the money that we got for the $10,000, using it for further evaluation and assessments. I didn't really remember that was, if that's in the minutes, does that mean that we all said that and agreed to that, or?
No, that just means that
Okay.
somebody brought it up.
Okay,
And I remember that several of us brought it up.
okay.
That was on, at one point on the, whatever you call new business, but action items,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, great. Well, it's been moved and seconded that the minutes are accepted. So would everybody raise your hand if you agree? Looks unanimous. Anybody disagree? Okay, the
We
minutes
are gonna talk about the piece that she just mentioned, because
Yeah.
it's in the action item. So,
Yep.
yeah, so
Yep.
then do we go back and revote the minutes so that it reflects what we think it's supposed to say?
Well, actually, Tia, this is your request. Did you want to discuss that further?
I'm sorry, what are we discussing?
The
I
addition made to the minutes at Tia's request, which read, one suggestion to a select board may be to review the procurement policy and what or how the proposal was accepted in 2018.
Yep, I have the procurement policy here,
Great.
And
which,
just for details on that, we did discuss that at the last meeting.
Yeah.
It just wasn't
It
very clear
wasn't
in the
in the
minutes, but I have
minutes.
actually added that to the
yes.
minutes. Awesome.
Yeah, so I do have that here, so when we get to that point, I can pass it out, or I can
Well,
pass it
let's-
out now.
No, let's pass it out when we get to that.
Okay,
point.
perfect.
And thank you, Tyler, for including it in the minutes. Is everybody comfortable with that?
And then by request, the one that's on here, by request Lois, that one,
Yep.
that is about the minutes. So
Okay.
I wanna make sure that we don't have to go back and revote the minutes.
Yeah. No, I didn't understand
Okay.
that that was with respect to the minutes, so let's talk
It's in the
about it.
minutes.
Okay, let's
So I
talk.
just wanted to make sure that, I'm where Paula was. I don't remember having the discussion that we could use the $10,000 for evaluations and assessments. I may have been out of the room at that time, but I didn't understand that that money could be used for anything except what the town had voted it for. The town voted for that money to go from undesignated funds.
I don't remember it being that specific. I think that's what you were asking for, but I think it ended up being voted in a more general way.
So we have to go back and look at the town meeting
We may,
minutes?
I mean, if you're concerned about it.
I am concerned about it because I don't think that $10,000 that the town residents voted for
Is
repair of
available
the sills,
for-
because that's what I was arguing for when I kept coming up to the mic.
Yep.
Should be used for an evaluation and assessment. I do disagree with it, and I
But
think
I-
that's what you were saying too.
Well, yeah, but I'm not really even sure, I mean, that we would have to pay anybody to ask for, I mean, whenever you ask for, a builder to come and make an assessment, you usually don't pay for that. So maybe it's a moot point, but I was wondering,
We did discuss
What
it,
we-
and that's what's reflected in the minutes.
It might have
I
been in-
remember discussing it myself.
okay.
Um,
I mean, I
but-
guess we did, but we didn't vote
What's
on
that?
anything.
No, we didn't vote on anything last week at all. So I think what I would recommend you do is see if you can get a transcript or the result of that vote from the town meeting
Okay.
and see what it says.
We'll do
and
that
bring
right
it-
now, I'll bring it next time.
Yeah, bring it next time, yeah. But I think the minutes are accurate in reflecting the fact that we did discuss that.
Can I ask
But
who
there weren't any
suggested that?
decisions made.
That we could use the $10,000 for something else?
I don't, yeah, I remember it being talked, but I don't know how it came up even.
Yeah, I don't remember how it came up. I remember it was the subject of discussion.
Doesn't seem like we'll be using it for that.
I wouldn't think so. I think it just kind of came up that's why I was surprised that it was,
Yeah, and it wasn't a decision, it was just a discussion. Um,
And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because just in general, we don't have the authority to spend any money.
Right.
I mean, we'd have to go to the selectmen if it's under 10,000, and the town if it's over 10,000.
Right. And I think if, what Jerry was saying is that if we have some intended use for that in this budget cycle, that we need to recommend it to the selectmen before, or during September.
Maybe it was Jerry who brought it up, didn't blame him.
It probably
it might have been
was.
him.
I don't, so this might just be a logistic thing, but when I'm taking notes, one, should I just include names of whoever said things? Okay.
I
And
don't
two,
think it's necessary.
I feel like when things are discussed, I should make note of them, even if they haven't gone to an official vote, because it seems like this would have been less of an issue if I just disregarded what people said, so I'm a little confused.
I think you could include the items that we discuss, but I think if it's something we vote on, I think you should make that very clear.
Yeah, agreed, okay.
Is that,
If we take action on it.
yeah,
So-
yeah.
I guess the other one of the bullet points in the minutes, I found it now, but maybe it's too late. But it's written, church is likely to have serious structural issues or collapse in 4 to 5 years per the Northeast House rights. And I hadn't read that prior to leaving here, but it doesn't say that. So that information,
Is it?
I don't know, but
It didn't
I don't
say it
know.
on the report that
it
I
didn't,
remember.
so where does that come from, that 4 to 5 years that the building could collapse? Because
That's what
When-
Lois said.
When
from
Jerry
before.
Calvin and I met with Northeast House Rights, what he said was that the rear part of the building, he wasn't gonna collapse today or tomorrow, but that it doesn't have a life beyond 4 or 5 years.
Okay. So I think that has to be a little more clear. It's the northeast corner, not the whole building.
I don't know. if
I mean,
the
in the-
Northeast- I
in
didn't
the-
say Northeast corner, Northeast House Rights.
But,
I don't know which
I
corner.
mean, in like the
it is.
main,
was the co-
in
that's
the
the
main
company, so
preservation,
Yes,
he
yes.
says, 10 to 20, this was written in 2015 and redone in 2017, and he says in 10 to 20 years, the building could have some serious issues. I guess,
So could
that
you-
4 to 5 years is of,
Could you make the minutes more specific and say that Lois recalled, who was it?
Northeast House.
Craig, Northeast House Rights, Jerry was there, I mean, Jerry was,
But that's,
I'm just saying that Jerry was also, and Calvin were also
yeah,
there.
but it's your recollection of it.
Yes, it was.
Just say that Lois recalled.
Because it's not on, I think it's on the estimate.
it's not on the estimate. I read it, I handed it to my husband, asked him to read it.
Yeah.
And I did not, and I hadn't read the estimate until I
Yeah,
got home that night.
yeah.
That's great, thank you.
So I just,
Okay, so with the amendments we've discussed, Would somebody make a motion to accept the minutes?
I will make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Great. Would somebody second that? Terrific. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, great. Let's have a vote. Everybody who approves of the minutes, please raise your hand.
Can I just run the copy by everyone?
Oh, sure,
first?
sure, sure.
I just wrote, Lois recalls from the meeting with Northeast Health writes that the church is likely to have serious structural issues or have a side collapse in 4 to 5 years.
Perfect. Perfect.
Its life is probably not long.
So please raise your hand if you approve of the minutes. Great. Please raise your hand if you do not approve of the minutes. It's unanimous. All right, let's move on to the action items. And I talked with Lois and Tyler a little bit about, using the procedure, the rules of procedure and stuff. And what we're doing didn't seem to me to fit into the structure of old business and new business. So I took it upon myself to kind of put things down as action items, this thing that seems that we're gonna discuss and perhaps decide, rather than trying to classify them as old business and new business and divide them up like that, so.
And is an action item something we take action on then?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
somehow, I mean, we're having Tia give us a presentation, that's the action. It doesn't mean we have to vote on it. Terrific, so,
All
with that
right.
having been said,
All right, so I made a little, wrote up a little something for everybody. So I'm not gonna read it word for word, you guys can all take it home, yeah.
great.
And then I'll pass out the timeline too. Emily was awesome and put a timeline together, and I helped her insert a few things here and there. We forgot to write the foundation work that was done in 2019, so I hand wrote that on the back. So the timeline itself is, will really show you how much work has been done on the church over the years that the town has approved, and that the Historical Society as a private entity has raised money to have the church fixed. I'd say more times than not. I also found an old article about the foundation going out to bid for repairs back in 1959. So the very first time those cinder blocks were put in would have been either 1959 or 1960. So that is when the original blocks would have been removed from the back of the church.
We're talking about the granite blocks.
The granite blocks.
Is that when they were pushed down the hill as well?
I would assume so. I would think so, because I don't think they were up the top.
I
I
thought they were
think-
stacked.
I think they were closer to the top, and then when the fill was brought in 2019, they probably got pushed down further. Because I feel like they were closer to the church, which would make sense, because that back had been washing away
I
for a
thought there
while.
was a few, couple laying kind of on the edge there.
Like off to the side.
Well, no, on the side where there was a hole, I thought there was some laying there, but that could just be.
It might show on the pictures from the report too, that he did.
Shows a cinder block.
But there was article upon article about how the building was near collapse and the sill needed to be replaced all the way back to like 1940. And the sill has yet to be fixed, and the rear corner of the building is still collapsing. So here we are, almost 75 years later, and it still hasn't been fixed. But anyway, so the timeline will go through right from day one, right up to when the church is bought by the town. I found all kinds of articles about how townspeople donated their own money so that it can become a town hall. I thought that was kind of neat. All the renovations that took place inside of it.
Are those, you mentioned granite blocks, are those still there?
It appears they're down below. Like if you look down in the brush, there's granite blocks back there. So the chances of them being back there, most of them are probably good unless over the years they were taken away, like the one that went missing at the Methodist church. So granite is highly sought after, so it's very possible that from 1959 till now, some of them have walked. But this is a pretty good timeline of everything that has ever been done to the church from day one. And then for the history, I did a little history about how when the church was built back in 1835. And I'm not gonna like read it to you guys, because you guys can read it yourselves, but I don't know if you guys are aware that there's a Revere bell that sits at the top of the church, made by Paul Revere's son. There's also the church, and you can see it in the picture down here in the front. The doors that we enter now are the original doors that were the male and female doors that were off to the sides. And the windows that are on the front of the church are not original to 1835, but all of the windows on the side and the back are all 12/12 original windows, which are all in pretty good shape, surprisingly, for how old they are. So 1835 windows. Bell tower has been repaired many a times over the years, and then the Historical Society had a big fundraiser where they had the whole belfry redone and fixed. So they were able to ring the bell, I think for the first time, I think I have it listed in the timeline. They had a rope installed so the bell could be rung the first time, I think probably in the old home days, which was kind of cool. And
When was
before that, I think it was 88, it's in here, it's in the timeline. But before that, the bell hadn't been rung probably for 100 years. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty neat. The church also features, in our lovely one-hole outhouse, I believe we're one of the only churches in the state of Maine that has an indoor one-hole outhouse, according to the Androscoggin history book. It was noted in there, so, it was noted in there. This,
And it was a two-holder, but
just a
one.
one-holer, yeah. And then the original Queen Anne style, stained glass window that's in the lovely one-holer bathroom still is in existence today too, which is kind
Sounds
of
like
neat.
a really picturesque bathroom.
Oh, yeah, it's,
It's not usable
yeah.
though.
Every once in a while, you still get a walk to sewer. Don't know why, but you do. Something else neat to note about the history of the church, the stairs that are inside of the church now, that's not the original placement of the stairs. The stairs would have been at the front of the church when you walk in the civil defense office, which sits off to the right. So the stairs would have went straight up. And there used to be 2 wood stoves that sat at the back of the church. And there was a brick sort of hearth that went around with seating, so the men could sit around and get warm. Thought that was kind of interesting to read. Church has been struck by lightning twice. There was also a chandelier that fell from the ceiling during a church service and nearly burned a woman to death. It's noted in an article by, I believe his name was Robert Strout, and he talks about a very skinny man standing at the back left window, helping people jump out of the church as it was on fire. And the woman that had the chandelier fall, she was a hefty broad. They basically went out the window together and they rolled down the hill together off the embankment. So I thought that was
Went
kind
out
of neat.
one of the back doors.
Down off the back, yep. So they rolled down the hill together.
When was that?
God, that would have been, well, the church would have still been in service. I think the last service was held in like 1870 something. I have that in here too. 1878, I think, was the very last time a church service was ever held. So it would have been somewhere around that time.
And
These
how family
anec-
was it burned? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Are the anecdotes you're talking about now also in this?
Maybe. I think so. They might be in there, yeah. But there's a whole article, Emily found it, I'd be glad to send it to everybody. I have it digitalized, but, it's written by, I believe his name's Robert Strout, who lived in Candy's house, which has also been struck by lightning down into the basement, which is quite interesting. But he goes on and talks all about the church, and there's an old picture of how the pews were set up, and you can still see the old stovepipe that runs down the front, so it's pretty neat. I can- Yeah,
I would
it's,
love that.
it's a really neat read, and it talks about the man and the woman who rolled down over the hill, and how somebody nearly burned to death by the chandelier.
How badly was the church burned?
Not bad at all, but apparently the floor that's there now is not original, but the floor underneath it still has burn marks from where the chandelier fell. So it was covered over when the town hall was bought in 1922, yeah, yeah. It's also been featured in 2 books, the church. Actually, it's probably been featured in more, but they really specify the church in the Revere Bell, which is neat. Do we have a copy? We have a copy of the Revere Bell book. And then this New England Town Meeting book, I would love to get a copy of. It's $110 on eBay, but it actually features like members of our town young girls like voting for the first time, and there's some really neat pictures within the book, but it's apparently a very rare book, and it's pretty expensive, but I do have a copy on eBay.
If anything, if it's written by John Gould, it's probably hysterical.
I'm sure it
Oh, really?
is.
Very funny.
Yeah.
He was pretty well known.
And then throughout the years, you know, that church has seen religious services, funerals, baptisms, weddings, choir performances by Anna Louise Carey. I mean, she was the most famous opera singer to come out of our town, so. The Historical Society has been holding events in that church since '88-ish, give or take. Quilt exhibits, art shows, bake sales, open houses, historical talks. And then prior to that, that's where people would go and vote. So the Historical Society actually had to have the floor refinished at one point because it had left, the voting booths had left divots in the floor from sitting there for so many years. It would have been neat to still have those old voting booths. I don't know what happened to them. All of the pews that are in the church, there are 6 original pews. Those were all restored. I think it was in the 80s. They were all restored. It's all written in this timeline. And it could be listed in this as well, who restored the pews. They were originally stained, and then the Historical Society decided on a lovely color for the inside of the church to make them think of like a coastal breeze. So that is why the church is now a coastal breeze color. And the pews were then painted. There's also 3 other pews. I can only really figure out which one is one of them, but 3 of them came from the Solid Rock Grange, which is over by the Quaker Meeting House Church. It's the Robert Small Agency, so it sits right
Oh.
across the street.
Yeah.
So inside of that were 3 pews that originally came from the Quaker Meeting House, and we have 3 of those over there. So those were donated when when it was sold to the insurance company, which is kind of neat. One of them is extremely obvious. The other 2, it's kind of hard to determine because they look so much like the other church pews that are in there. And
One
then.
of them has different arms on it.
They sure do, yeah. It's a little bit narrower and kind of sits up straighter than the other ones. And then on the back, I just did a little bit of stuff that the Historical Society has done over the years and how it was voted in due to Article 91 in April of 1988 for the Historical Society to be housed within the church. And I think most of you have been in there, but we are getting ready to have an open house, and it's just full of really cool stuff. The other day, we found a book, and what book was, it was like 1774?
Yep, 1774.
And it was town meeting minutes when the town was still rural.
Yeah.
So it's extremely old.
That's interesting.
We hope to have that featured in a glass box for the open house in September. It was just sitting in a box, but we've done so much work. Emily and Tyler have made a beautiful website. I made a few little articles in there about, you know, speakers and whatnot that have happened at the church. So the church has technically been a museum since the Historical Society took it over. All of the items that are in there, well, not all of them, but a good majority were stored at May Parker's house for a really long time. And then when they got inside permission to be in there, they moved all the artifacts over to the church, turned it into a museum, and it's been a museum ever since. So almost 30 years now it's been operating as a museum. Yeah. So it does warrant the question of why is now the town wondering what the church can be used for when for the past 30 years it's been the same thing. So you can see why we're like, oh, such a strange question to ask. I think there was a time when members of the town thought it was used for storage. It's never really been storage, but there was a small portion of time when there were very few members and it kind of got turned upside down. But not anymore, it looks amazing. So feel free to read this over anytime you want. I'm not much for reading word for word to people. We can all read, so. And the timeline is really informative. It really goes to show how much work and dedication has gone into keeping that building standing for nearly 200 years. So,
I'm trying to found all this stuff.
oh, let me tell you what. It was, yeah, it's crazy.
I thought we were just getting a little blurb about the church.
Is museum a legal classification or a state municipal classification? How does that, how does the building become a museum?
Well, I mean, I don't know, but it's been one since they moved in there, so they would
Well,
have,
that's your description of it.
yeah, they would.
I don't think it's any kind of a legal description.
No, the building, inside the building is technically the Historical Society. So,
Say that again?
the Historical Society, which typically most historical societies are museums that you can go and see. So Historical Society, museum, it's all in sort of the same classification term. So if you drive through town and you see, like I'm thinking Gray, the Gray Historical Society, it's a building, you go in, it's a museum, you can do research, genealogy, deeds, all of that stuff.
So there's no legal or tax benefit to calling it a museum or anything like that?
That I have no idea, I'm not sure,
How we would find that out.
yeah.
Our ordinance calls museums and libraries cultural facilities. It might be a place.
Say that again?
Our ordinance calls museums and libraries and things cultural facilities. I don't know.
The land use ordinance. Is
Yes.
that what you're referring to?
Yeah, educational purposes, that type of thing. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so it's been open to the public now since 1988, and they've been having open houses there ever since. So it's been a few hot years since we've had an open house, but we're super excited to have one next month.
I think it's important to say also that we've gotten a lot of feedback from people that now, because it's started to be posted on Facebook, or people have just come by when we've been there and they've seen the door open and they've stopped and come in, and people are, a lot of people that have stopped, and the people on Facebook seem to be really interested in having that continue.
Yeah,
So, I think when we consider what our options are, that's gonna be important for us to consider what the, not what necessarily this group of, a few people would like, but what the bigger community would like. And I am not someone who believes in putting out polls all the time on yes or no, do you want this, do you want that? But I think we need to read the community and understand that at least some of the people
yeah. It's not just
do
important to us,
value the
but-
history of Durham and enjoy thinking that we might have, call it what you want, a cultural center or a museum, but, are gonna look forward to having that as a place that they can use and their children can come and visit, and
Schools can go see.
schools.
I've
yeah.
held many Girl Scout things over there, showing the Girl Scouts, letting them try on hats, things like that. Oh shoot, my train of thought's gone. You had just said something that made me think of it, and it's gone now.
Well, don't ask me,
Not-
because
not
I
to
forgot
cut
what I said, so.
Gone.
Not to cut off the excellent, very good
Yeah.
presentation, but we're gonna get to the uses down the road. Is that, is part of that discussion?
Yeah,
On the
yeah,
agenda?
it's all, yeah.
So you can remember what it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where the use of the church has been that for the past 30 years, so it's hard for me to understand why it's being questioned on what the use will be now, with all the support that's happened over the past almost 200 years for the church. It's just,
Yeah, I think it's, that's something to ask the selectmen.
yeah,
They gave us this charge to look at it.
yeah. And it is interesting too, I did find emails that date back, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think 2018, where we had contractors coming to look at the church. I had spoke with Kevin Neto, and he basically just went and axed it. And then all of a sudden, a committee was gonna be formed. We met with the newspapers, crickets, more crickets, more crickets.
Well, in the pandemic.
The pandemic, but this is not the first time, like, there's been a kibosh. It's been put on the back burner, put on the back burner. So the more things get put on the back burner, I mean, things have been put on the back burner. The foundation's been put on the back burner for a really long time. So, yeah,
Well, I think our charge is an indication that somebody at least wants to deal with the issue.
Maybe the new select board is in favor of it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I have no clue what or whether they are anticipating any particular outcome from this group. And I have no idea what it's gonna be.
I know originally when the committee was to be formed, it was going to be a building committee to help basically get bids. I've got the whole email from the select board stating that, and, but I was told that we couldn't do that until a committee was formed, and that it was gonna go on the agenda. I think it went on the agenda, but,
Well, it's all water under the bridge.
Exactly.
So we should move forward.
yeah.
Exactly.
So it's definitely been, we've been trying to do it now for about 5 years, so here we are.
The other thing I think it's important, and I feel like maybe I carried misinformation, is that foundation, the cement blocks were done way before I thought they were done. My understanding from conversations and stuff is that they had been done in the last decade or
Mhm.
less. It came down to the $18,000 that was paid in 2019, and the assumption in that, when I came in and asked to see what it was that that had been foundation work. But now I'm understanding with what you've given us, that it was way before then. It might have been before, I don't remember now what the year was, but it might have been before 2000 when that was done. And so I stand corrected, and anything that I said that I was carrying as second or third hand, I shouldn't have repeated probably unless it was documented,
So the foundation work, I think we were looking to have done was to have that foundation fixed back in 2019, but it looks all that happened was some mortar was slapped on that
Well,
crack.
do we know, I mean, there must be somewhere where we should be able to find out what
What was
was
done.
happened.
Mhm.
And if there was foundation work, it should have been approved by the codes officer.
Yeah, so that's where this
that's- I
great
mean,
document comes
Maybe
in
the
handy.
codes officer needs to come and tell us what happened in 2019.
But why, I gotta go back to why does it matter? Aren't we really focused on what we're gonna do going forward?
Yes, but at the
I mean, I
same-
would be careful, because last meeting we threw out Mike Kopp's name. and
No,
it
nobody
made-
said anybody,
Right.
nobody said that name in the meeting. It was never said.
Now,
Yep,
Well,
But it wasn't him, is the point. So,
it was him
okay.
that did the work.
but we don't know what he did.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I think
That's the
that's
point.
important,
That is
and,
the
and I
point.
think we have to be
Forward.
careful we don't go on assumptions that aren't true.
Yeah, but I think
Have them in there.
figuring
Yeah,
out
right.
what was done, what bids were submitted, who approved of the work, after many reports have been done on what needed to be done to the church to basically save it, I think is important.
I don't know if I agree. I think we're looking forward.
I think the only reason why I think it's important is I feel like, I think the money that went towards it may have not been used to the fullest extent.
Why does that matter?
And we brought
Because-
that to the town manager's attention. I
Yeah.
think it's that the town managers, if the town didn't get its money's worth, that's up to he and the public
Exactly,
works
right.
guy, not us to,
100%.
So you're saying it's not our committees, that we need to take it
much better said than I did.
to the town?
I'm just thinking now, moving forward, the money that we have to put into the church could have been less had it been done correctly.
It's not gonna change the story, though.
I was gonna say again,
I know.
doesn't matter.
So, moving forward,
Mhm.
this
Is
will
a
be
Bible.
followed?
Legally, it has to be.
Okay.
I am a procurement officer, that is my job. If I do not follow this at my job and we get audited, I can be sued personally, and the company could be sued. So if this policy is not followed and the town is audited, and they come back and see that an RFP wasn't done, that it did not go out to bid, it wasn't posted publicly, they could get in trouble. All of that documentation needs to be kept, so when they're audited, they can show proof of it. I deal with this on a daily basis, so this is why this here is so extremely important, that it is done correctly.
So
But
another.
not necessarily to us.
It's not
Right,
our,
so-
not our charter
Yeah.
it's up to the town, I mean, your point is.
100%.
Right.
So in a different capacity
Yeah.
than this committee,
Yeah.
I have asked to be on the agenda for the select board meeting on the 8th, which is next Tuesday, to talk about the process for an RFP,
Mhm.
because the commission, of which I chair, we were the people who asked for the $10,000 when we were at town meeting and had the exchanges. So it comes back to, when is that money gonna go out to an when is the RFP gonna be developed
Mhm.
so that we can, start a process? If indeed that's what the select board decides to do with the money that the residents voted, I don't know what, but an
Yeah.
RFP, I don't know the legal pieces that Tia does, I just know that I believe there are supposed to be a minimum of 3 bids
That's
if
the
you
usual.
can get them.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
So,
Yep. But, I think exactly, I mean, it's not our business.
right, it's a different capacity, I'm
Mhm.
just
Right.
sharing that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I was gonna say that I think, it'll depend somewhat on exactly what the town voted for at town
yes,
That's
agreed,
important.
so I'll
Mhm.
be doing some scrambling on
Mhm.
Monday, I guess, cause the meeting's Tuesday.
meeting. Neil, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanna try and bring some focus. We're not gonna spend, we're not gonna procure anything.
Nope.
We're just gonna suggest possibilities for ideas and attach some cost to them,
Right.
some estimates to them.
I think as a committee, it's important for us to make sure that they're following the rule.
We're not overseeing.
We're not
No,
producing anything.
no, but well, I can't say I live here anymore, but as taxpayers, you would hope that they are following these procedures correctly. That when work does get done on the church, I know we have no say in it, but I think as taxpayers, we have the right to make sure that the work is being
As individual
complied.
taxpayers.
100%.
Not as disc.
No, but everybody here except for myself.
So what I was gonna say was the Historical Society has not changed their charter, whatever they wanna do with the money that's been assigned to them, they can do now, if they can get the approval of the select.
We
board.
don't have any money in the Historical Society.
I thought you had $21,000.
No.
Well, that's in the renovation fund.
It's like Catholic,
But it was for, the Historical Society asked for the money, it was given to the Historical Society, but it's put in a separate fund of the town's money.
Okay,
Not-
my
that's-
point is, we're not gonna spend any money, but whatever you guys were gonna do, you can still do outside of this committee. We have no authority.
Correct.
We can't change anything that your vision was gonna do.
And nor do we want to.
Or they want to,
Yeah.
but I think what we said was that the 31,000
21 plus 10 this year, yes,
isn't gonna
31.
be sufficient to do what needs to be done, and probably without doing the foundation isn't a good thing to do anyway. That's kind of what I thought we said last week,
But we
at the
aren't,
first meeting.
we aren't making that decision.
No, but I mean, that was
Yeah.
discussed
Yeah,
certainly.
Yeah.
so that would be, from a financial perspective, that would be my recommendation, that we don't spend any money on a temporary fix with the sill without doing the foundation.
we being the town, I mean,
Yes,
it's
yeah.
not up to Historical
Yeah,
Society
the-
or
The
us.
town's gonna make this decision, not us. So that's kind of, to me, that's the bare minimum of what I've got out of this so far. You don't wanna spend the money you've got, my opinion, because it's not the right spend without doing the foundation. And we don't know exactly how much the whole thing's gonna cost. That's a bare minimum of what needs to be done.
Well, if the Historical Society has access to that 10 grand,
We don't. We have no access to that.
That's select board money.
No.
I think it's like in the cemetery fund or some of the other
So the
funds.
Historical
but
Society
if
is
the,
not
s-
town
if the
appointed.
select board is gonna take a recommendation from you about how to use that 10 grand that you make in September, if you wanna have it spent during this
It would
budget
probably
cycle.
be better coming from the Historic District Commission,
I think it's the
Well,
commission.
because the society is not town
Two
appointed.
different committees,
Yeah.
but
The
in the
society
past-
has never been able to request anything. I mean, not since two
Well,
thousand
who
and
was it,
five.
who were you representing when you?
The commission.
Okay.
The
Two
Historic
separate-
District Commission,
but
Yeah.
because we had
5
put that
years-
into our budget
but-
when, in November, when I submitted the budget, there was a page that said, in addition to the money that we're asking for our committee, we're also asking for $10,000 for repairs to the Union Church, which had been traditionally granted up until, I don't know when,
Yeah, you guys had mentioned that.
twenty
they had
nineteen
done
or
it.
something
Yeah.
like that, and we had $66,000 in the account.
But
And
then
now
it was
it's the
granted to the
21.
Historical Society, that's
Some of it
different.
was,
So
yeah,
prior
some of
to
it
the
was.
Historic District Commission being active in 2014, prior to that, then the
Long, yeah.
Historical Society, every year at town meeting would ask for money.
Yeah.
The
So
Margaret
that's
Whitworth.
where, and then it was,
So if you don't mind if I finish,
sorry,
thank you. So I was representing the commission in
Okay.
that conversation back and forth that we were having at the town meeting. I do have a question, if I may, about what Neil just said. Are we, I don't see where we're charged with getting estimates. I thought that was the RFP process that the select board, our
Well, I don't
charge
think-
doesn't say anything about money.
Here's my thought.
Okay,
My thought is,
I need to have clear.
yeah, my thought is that the product of this commission, or this committee rather, will be a list of potential outcomes attached to some kind of swag about what it's gonna cost. I don't think we need to get formal estimates, I don't think we need to get proposals or bids or any of that kind of stuff. But I think for the selectmen to make an informed decision, I think they need to know the options and they need to know kind of where in the world of hundreds or millions of dollars it's gonna fall.
That's my question. For the entire process of, are you, to bring the, Union Church up to code, is that what you're talking about? Like, so that we would have a ramp, so that we would have an electrical box that's
I think
up
that's
to
one
code,
of
so
the
that we would have
options.
plumbing that's up to code?
I think that's one of the options.
Okay.
That's one of those outcomes that we'll list. I mean,
Okay,
we may have another outcome to tear it down. We may have
I-
another outcome to sell it.
that comes to the commission.
But I mean, I'm just saying, my thought about our product is that it should be a pretty comprehensive list of
Okay.
all the options we can think of. You know, spitballing and using our imagination, and then attaching some kind of, wild
Swag,
guess,
swag, right.
swag, yeah, about what the cost or the benefit to the town. I mean, if we sell that property to somebody who wants it to put up a little,
Hot dog stand?
yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
it'd have to go to a town vote, and the people of the town, since they're
Yeah.
taxpayers, would
It
have
comes to the
vote.
commission, and
Yeah.
all comes to the commission
Yeah.
because it's in the historic district.
yeah, of course.
I don't see it ever being able to be sold.
But you know what, that's an option, that's a potential option, and that's,
And it's up to the town, again, it's up to the town to say, we wanna sell it, we wanna tear it down, we wanna give it to sell it for a buck to the society,
Society.
whatever it may be.
Mhm.
That's who's gonna make the decision.
can you give me, I'm unsure about what the, purview of the commission is.
Sure. So the commission oversees, along with the codes officer, and somewhat the select board, oversees the building processes in the historic district, which runs basically from 4 or 5 houses down on the road to Lisbon Falls, which I can never remember the names of the
Well,
roads,
it's
so I'm just gonna
Route
describe it. Up to the, Route 9, thank you, yes, there's another name for it though.
Yeah.
Newellbrook.
Yeah.
And then up to the corner about where the bandstand is, and across to the Congregational Church, and then both sides of the road, Ferry Road, which
Mhm.
goes down
Mhm.
off to the right of the bandstand,
Yep,
and Route one
Ferry Road
thirty-six.
is included, the whole.
Yeah,
thing?
that whole section from the river. I'd like to be able to show you on one of these maps, but I don't think I can, but, and then up past
You
the,
can on this one's
Okay.
zoning map that has
okay,
the.
up past the Historical Society building, up and starting down the other side of the
This
hill,
little purple section.
so.
Oh, okay, okay.
And what happens there is if there's any, not interior, but exterior changes to buildings, fences, additions.
Paint,
No,
no?
not paint, no, we don't get to choose the paint colors. That's how some of them
Yeah.
have come in in different colors, but anything like that, there are standards within the ordinances that are laid out, like roof pitch and it's everything, presently, it's everything within 1,500 feet of any building in town that we have to know about, and the codes officer needs to review any building that's on the historic registry.
Oh, okay.
So there are 5, and then there are 5 that would qualify, so it's a little confusing right now, that's where we're working on language.
So how
The
is,
commission is working
yeah,
on language.
yeah, how is the commission's interest in something triggered? Building permit? Somebody,
Yes, it should be. There have been some times when we've not aligned very well, and we didn't know that there were changes being made, like buildings being added or garages being converted or whatever. And so in the past, there have been some pretty big misses. But now I think the codes officer that we have presently
is in tune.
he admits he doesn't know everything about it, but he is in tune to what his responsibility is in letting us know, I believe. But, I mean, I live next to the Methodist church. I put on vinyl siding because I didn't, 2 decades ago, because I didn't know that I couldn't, because nobody in town told me that I couldn't. So, those sorts of misses, I shouldn't have been allowed to do that. And, you know, there are other changes to houses that are adjacent to or within 1,500 feet of,
National.
one of the National Registry buildings, yeah, so. It's sort of like understanding the museum. There have been some misses in the past, and I think what everybody's trying to do, this committee, the commission, the Historical Society, I think Jerry, the codes officer, Alan, I think everybody's trying to come together so that we're all working and know what the other group is doing.
Cohesively, so.
Yeah, so it's not like
Yeah, yeah, sure,
headbutting,
sure, that's great.
so, and hopefully this committee will do the same.
Thank you, that's very helpful to me. I didn't have a good understanding of where that fit into the big scheme of things.
Believe me, when I started on the commission, neither did I. It's only after I've read the ordinances 400 times.
And ordinance language is so easy to understand.
Trying to simplify.
Does anybody have any questions or comments from Tia on her presentations?
Good job.
Yeah, thank you so much, that was terrific and.
Above and beyond.
Yeah.
I didn't
Thank you,
expect
Emily,
all
for
that.
helping.
Thank you, Emily.
Emily too.
That was really great. Okay, so let's move on to the report of the meeting with the Kopp brothers. Lois was kind enough to give us a written report. Does anybody else who's there want to expand on that?
We don't have a copy of that, do we?
I didn't bring any, I'm sorry.
Nor did I. I think it was interesting that, I think I'm sharing this correctly if I say that pretty much Mr.
I can print more, if I can hook up to a printer here. Is Devin still here?
I don't think so, I think I saw him walk.
Pretty much when Mr. Kopp stepped out of his pickup truck, he pretty much was like, you know,
Yeah, the bottom line was that it can't be moved, and that it, you know, in order to replace the foundation, it would have to be picked up. One of the options would be to pick it up and put a new foundation underneath it, and then put it back down. He could do the picking up part.
correct.
And the sill rebuild,
And
sorry,
we
I
can do
think,
the sills too, right?
yeah, I think,
Yes.
thought he
I
said
think
that's-
there's 2 parts to pick it up, rebuild the sill at 50,000, rebuild the foundation, 50,000. So pick it up, rebuild the foundation, if you're gonna leave it in place, put it back down on a new foundation, it was $100,000.
He thought, he was saying,
Yeah.
Yes.
he was saying that the price
It's
of
always unknown.
concrete is like astronomical right now. I don't know what it was, $140 a square foot, I don't know what it was, but it was some huge amount. So he was saying, this is a ballpark, you can't hold me to this. I'm saying $50,000, could
As
be
a
more, could
swag.
be less, and so, yeah. Yeah, so that was,
But
An
yeah, that's,
interesting
I think, an amount of information, to your point earlier, was if one of the suggestions going forward is to leave it in place, but fix the sill, fix the foundation, town, you're looking at $100,000
Yeah.
total.
That's useful,
And
that's
so-
kind of useful information.
The town, you've gotta come up with 70,000, whatever the difference is between what's already been, approved kind of deal, so.
Right.
That would help the town make a decision, that we wanna spend another $70,000 on it.
Fixing the sill, does that have, like, the corner up on the top that's all
No,
rotted?
the
That has
sill
nothing
is
to
the
do with it?
bottom.
Right, so
But,
that does
but you
include
do
that.
have, you have to start with the foundation,
Mhm.
because there isn't any point fixing the other part, because when you change the foundation, it's all gonna move. So, kinda, it has to start at the bottom,
Yeah.
That's true.
and work
I
up.
wasn't sure if it included the corner or not, the sill.
so another,
There's a huge rotted corner at the top where the animals are coming in. No, I know
No,
that, I
the
just
corner
wasn't
post.
sure if it was included in that price.
so Emily and I, because, here's another crossover. So Emily and I are working on the Western Methodist Church, and so is the person from Northeast House Rights. So he had, as I gave you last time, he had given an estimate of $50,179.47.
Yep.
For the work that he described on there. That was to do all the sill, but when we were chatting, when we were doing windows, he said, once the town knows what it is that they want done, because everybody's shooting in the dark here.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, Mr. Kopp was and Craig was, they don't know, it wasn't apples to apples, it was bananas to tangerines.
Right.
So Craig said he would be able to bring the price down if it's different work than what's in the estimate that he prepared, not knowing what it was that the town wanted. I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's,
sure.
and I'm sure that's the way Mr. Kopp is feeling too, that, I mean, we're,
And it's all got a healthy dose of unknown, because, if you pick something up like that, you find other things
Yeah.
that are wrong.
Yeah, I think he said 40 to 45, and I threw out 50.
yeah,
Just, to add 10% at least at this point,
yeah.
as a good estimate for it. But I think that, and I think Lois or Neil or somebody mentioned it, that 100,000, if you lift it, put a new foundation on it, doesn't include holes,
Right.
wherever that hole may be. So there is additional work
Right.
that's gonna need to be done that we do need to get a ballpark on.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we don't wanna add, we're not gonna add, but we're making the town say, well, just leave it in place, and it's gonna cost you 100,000. And then, but not really, cause it's another 20,000 to fix, I think it's got relatively new, but anyway, there's other things that need to be done. Does it need to be brought up to ADA standards, I don't know, I have no idea. But we probably ought to get a good swag like we got, that day, to say, okay, if you're gonna make this usable in all the modern rules, here's what it's gonna cost you to ballpark swag to do. So is it 120,000,
Well, and in
150,000?
2017, I think, there was an estimate,
Yes, it was from Brenda.
$100,000
It was
then
90-something thousand.
to get it, to bring it
Up,
up to what it should be.
fix the foundation.
And that was 5 years ago, maybe
Yeah.
more.
Yep,
So,
Chris
I mean,
Tangway.
we know what prices, we know what's happened to lumber. and other
I
things,
think
but-
that even was fixing the corner too. I still have the bid.
So, Northeast House Rights, that's where it's not apples to apples. Northeast House Rights was talking about fixing that corner post. And part of the sill, but not 4 sides of the sill, because it's not rotten on 4 sides. So it really was, I mean, yeah, until
Yeah, if you're gonna,
It's a big question mark until we know what
right, right.
needs to be
And if you're
fixed.
gonna be comparing, you have to make sure you're comparing the same.
Yes.
Well, I don't know that we need this general question. I don't know that we need to compare.
Right.
What we need to know is have a good, reasonable number. If 100,000, we need to go to somebody else, get more, but
Yeah.
right now, we have what I think is a reasonable gas lag, I'd appreciate your term there, to do two things. Raise it,
Pick
fix
it
the
up.
sill, put a new foundation in.
Yeah.
But if there's other things that need to be done, we need to get it, but we don't need to say, well, Northeast versus COP versus, Smith Brothers at this point. I mean,
Right, I
what we
don't think we need that level of specificity.
we just need to say, hey, Tom, this is what we think it's gonna cost to make this building usable where it sits today.
Right, right. And, you know,
If that's
once
what
they
it
have
was.
a ballpark and once they start to decide what outcome they prefer, then they can dive into specifics, and get more bids and stuff.
So right now, one of the options could have been remove the building, but we now have heard that that's not an option. So do we say to the town, here was an idea, but it clearly is not?
I think that it makes sense to tell them what our process was.
So that would be the
Yeah.
first one,
Yeah, I would tell them,
you know, option would be move the building, but can't be done.
Right, I think that's.
Too expensive to be done.
Too expensive. Yeah, you can always do everything.
They can always do everything, I've seen what they do.
Well, our opinion is it's too expensive. Tom may be willing to do it.
Hundreds, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, the
I guess
answer
they-
was.
I don't think it's like what we presented to the town.
Well, yeah, I don't think the cops wanted to do it, I'm
No,
not,
they
yeah,
didn't.
I mean, they was clearly, now, and their reputation is extremely good, so, you know, they're not fly-by-night guys, but I think they started up, and we don't wanna do that, but, because, so you shouldn't, because,
Well,
but
and
if
the
you wanna
answer might
spend
be.
$200,000, somebody may very well move it, if that's what you want.
The answer
Well,
might be that you can't move it intact. I mean,
You can't,
Yeah, I think that's,
yeah.
I think that's kind of what they're running.
And, I mean, they do have a good reputation, so we just don't want some other person to come along and say, oh yeah, I can do that, and then, you know, it ends up in pieces along the road, but, because they have a great reputation.
I mean, the town would be without power for God only knows how long. I mean, the school,
And that
the
happens
fire
all the time
department.
anyway, it doesn't
I
matter.
mean, it could be
just
days.
run out there and do it with the
But,
power.
Yeah,
There are 18 sets of wires that go back and forth between the Eureka Center and the Union Church, so they have to, it used to be that it was much easier before it was, I guess, before it was all that fiber stuff, but now, Mr. Kopp said, basically hundreds of thousands of dollars to move it from the top of the hill to,
that's just
The
the
Eureka
telephone
Center.
poles, that's not even moving the church, that's just.
no, that was the, 'cause you have to,
That was the move.
CMP.
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
moved
CMP,
with
yeah.
wires, yeah.
So it is, it's very pricey.
Yeah.
Now, people have disassembled buildings before and
Yeah.
put them back together, and that's probably, you know, you're not paying at CMP, but there is also not cheap, and, you know, if we want to go further into that, we can, so. But I think Lois's summary was well written, and what happened that day.
Great. Any other questions about the
No, no, so
the
there's
Kopp
good-
Brothers
there's good.
meeting? Questions or comments? Okay, great, thank you, and thank you for putting together the written report.
Sure, I do that just for my own good.
That's
So I
great.
can remember
Well,
what's done.
it's
I
nice.
do it within
Helps us
24
remember.
hours.
Yeah, I think all that stuff will provide to the selectmen so that they can have the backup material. And so it's very valuable. MDOT,
Quick and dirty, and that's what it is. I called MDOT middle of last week, safety officer, who was a nice guy, and what he looked on his state GIS system and said, okay, I see where it is. His only comment, if you will, specific comment was, you can't have a big wide entrance, so you'd have to narrow it down, but I don't think we need to focus on, you can't just kind of pull in off of 136, you'd have to have an entrance,
Driveway,
one,
I
if
see.
you will, and control. So, but the short answer is, he needed to talk to the traffic engineer, and he was gonna go look, he being the safety guy, was gonna go look at it, I said, would you like company, he said no. And, so, he's gonna go, he'll give us a report and say, here's the right-of-way, where the right-of-way line ends, can't park inside that, on the road side of that, he'll give us, here's what you can do, line of sight, all those other kinds of things. So the traffic engineer was out on vacation last week, and I just thought I'd give him another week, and I'll report back to you as soon as I.
Is he
get-
contemplating like some kind of barriers or something?
Yes,
or-
well, he said you have to do something to control access to one point. So I don't, what that would be if you take some of those granite blocks and
Yeah.
up on the bottom of the hill or whatever, but he doesn't want, as I almost killed Neil the other day, somebody like that, kind of deal, somebody backing out onto one thing. It has to be a controlled high entrance to the thing.
And would they do that,
Maybe
or do
just a
we?
driveway, I mean, there kind of is, if you really look at it, there's gravel and then there's like a little paved,
Mhm.
there's a bit of a paved driveway, nobody ever follows it because they just drive off the road, but, I mean, I'm
And that may
guessing
be
that's
where
what
it goes.
he's thinking of, it just some kind of,
What he'll do, what I hope he'll do, is he'll say, okay, you've gotta, it happens all the time with the plan commission, you gotta have a line, you have to have a line of sight of this distance and a safety distance, so you got a hill over here, so you gotta be so many feet away from that hill, and that's where the entrance is. So I would hope he'd either sketch it up, or say, this is, you gotta be in roughly this location. We may have, he said, just looking at vegetation, so it's really, I don't wanna get into a lot of detail, because I don't know what he's gonna come back with, and he didn't really wanna have a great discussion on these, just throwing these kinds of things out, so
Do you think I put it in writing?
I asked him to.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so, yes,
Would they do it, or would this be something we would be required to do?
in terms of creating the entrance,
Barriers and. all
we'd
that
have to,
stuff?
I would assume we'd have to, yeah, I don't think they would do it, so.
that could be just cones, couldn't it? I mean, couldn't you just have cones, if you were having something there, you could just have, cones, and cones here, and there's a place you drive in there.
I don't know.
mean, maybe it could be as simple as
You
that.
might, my guess is, like, again, just purely a guess, is they're gonna want something more permanent to control that access, if that makes sense. Because the cones will go away, if you just have like a work Saturday or something like that, the cones aren't always there.
Yeah, but if you look at the Eureka down here, they don't have a fixed one.
But we haven't talked to the.
Well-
we haven't- Don't ask a question you may not wanna know the answer to.
Well, and is a piece of it, you're talking to the safety officer, so a piece of it may or may not be, and I don't wanna speculate, I guess, because I tend to do that, but the line of sight at Eureka is different than the line of sight at the top of the hill.
It could be, yes, it's a
It's a
different.
separate situation.
Yeah.
It could be. And so, yeah, I can't remember if there's a driveway across, sometimes they try to line driveways. And this is not a subdivision or it's whatever. So that's why I just recommend we just wait and see what he comes back. But I just wanted to let you all know that that I reached out to him and so on and so forth.
Toss the ball to them.
And hopefully he's running with it. He's not running with, but I will call him Monday if I don't hear from him by then.
Great,
Just find
thank
out
you.
where he is.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments about that? Terrific. All right, let's move on to the procurement policy, and how the proposal was accepted in 2018.
I think we
That's-
kind of already talked about
Okay.
that, yeah, we already discussed
I
that.
think we did. Discussion of possible uses of the Union Church. And my thought about this item was that if you are prepared to copy, I think we just let people throw out ideas. I think it would be best if people do it one at a time, just so it's not a big,
Like brainstorm
Cluster.
ideas.
brainstorm ideas for what.
Want a speaking order?
I don't think it's necessary, I just think, if we're polite and.
We just
let
go
person
around the
just-
room, and if someone
Yeah.
doesn't have something, they say pass and just keep going.
Yeah, that would work
I
fine.
do, since I know this group is full of a lot of people who have some strong opinions about the problems with things, like, my vote would be we reserve judgment on whether something's impossible or not for a later date. So if we say we wanna cast the building in gold, I'm gonna write it down and we will not discuss it, we will not be casting it in gold.
We're
And that
really
was
gonna
my idea.
brainstorm.
Perfect.
Okay, good, good.
I think
Okay.
I'm writing
this is
cast
just-
it in gold down,
Right.
okay.
Cast and go.
We're just spitballing, we're coming up with hopefully all the potential outcomes.
Okay, I'll throw out the first one, the town keeps it as a town museum, historical museum. The town keeps it as a historical museum.
So would that involve undoing the historical society's kind of role in it?
No, I think the role could stay the same, but I think that, my feeling is the town should own the building,
Okay.
and the historical society uses it,
This financial burden would stay with the town?
yes.
Okay. So that, I think that item is the town continues to own the building, and the historical society continues to run it as in its present capacity.
So basically, nothing changes at the end of the day. It's exactly the same as it is right now. Yeah.
Is that your intention?
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess.
You would
Town
include
owns it.
fix, upgrading and fixing it?
I guess that part becomes that, thus the town would have to have a committee or,
Yeah.
what's that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
That's off limits.
Those
Yeah.
are,
Oh,
yeah.
that's right, that's the gold
These are
plated.
just
Yeah.
uses.
Thank you,
just
Emily.
uses.
Uses.
Thank you.
Okay.
We need a policeman.
So perhaps another one of the options is that the town fix up the building and bring it up to code and allow the museum, the historical society to maintain the museum in the building.
Correct. That's another option.
That's the same thing.
Isn't that what I said?
Yeah, isn't
I-
it- how is that
I don't
different?
know if that's what you said or not, I didn't think you were saying money, and I'm saying that there would have to, it would be brought up to code by the town.
That's right, Emily stopped me when I asked about the money.
Yeah, I think, I feel like for usage, that is the same usage.
Well, I
which
think
is
one
what
Are
we're
we
discussing.
going usage or are we going who's gonna do it?
No, no, no,
Who
no.
and
We're
how.
going
Yeah.
usage.
Usage.
Usage is a different story, I think.
Yeah.
Who and how.
This is
I
the
think your option
dreaming
is-
big.
What's that?
This is the dreaming big thing.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly,
Yeah.
or dreaming little.
That's- yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I have one.
But I think your option is certainly an option. The option is do nothing. Keep everything the way it is.
Well, I do wanna fix the building, I don't wanna
Well,
leave the building. I
We're
mean,
not talking about what we want, we're just tossing out
Oh, you,
options.
I guess I didn't say that, just leave it, I didn't mean that.
Well, that's an
Is
option.
that what
so
I
let's-
said?
Let's
Yes,
include
that's
that
what I-
as an option.
Okay.
Just do nothing.
Okay.
But then we
So-
also have.
Now we have Lois's, go with Lois's,
Lo-
which I
Lo-
thought
Fix
was what
it.
I said.
Lois is on yours.
Well, I'm a little confused. We're talking about what we want to use the building for, or how we're going to finance whatever we want, and both, or both.
I think at the moment, we're just coming up with possibilities.
Of
And we can
usages.
talk about what numbers are associated with those later.
Which needs,
But I guess,
without being judgmental, it seems like ownership is a piece of that.
No, of
Who
course.
owns the building?
Yeah, of course.
Because it could be that someone else owns the building other than the town.
Yep. I mean, when I was thinking about this, there are a bunch of options for who actually ends up owning it.
yeah, so thus mine is, the town owns the building and
Yep.
the historical society continues to use it.
So that's exactly the situation. that exists.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. But I was assuming the town was gonna fix
Fix
it,
it, yeah.
But it's an option not to. Yeah, so let's make the second option, town owns it, town fixes it, historical society
I
continues to
feel
run
like that's not a change in usage, though. So if
it.
the
It's a change
usage,
in outcome, though.
are we talking about outcomes or usage? I know we're getting down to like nitpicking, but I feel like the like, in our committee charge, we have long-time uses for the property and how the town will benefit. And our second charge is what restoration is required, and I feel like we're commingling restoration with use. And I feel like they should be separate right now, but that's my opinion.
Like
So we're
use,
doing number
it
one.
becomes a store, or it
Yeah.
becomes a restaurant,
Yep, yep.
that kind of. that
I
kind of
think,
stuff.
I think that's part of it, in my vision anyway, this is just me. But I think, that's certainly part of it, but I think, I'm thinking about outcomes, and one of the outcomes is, the town sells it to somebody who wants to make it a store.
Yes, and I would say that is purely about use to me and has nothing to do with the restoration, which is the fix it part. Like, I don't think two separate options should be town owns it, town fixes it, town owns it, town doesn't fix it, and so on and so forth. Like, town fixes it and then sells it, town doesn't fix it and then sells it. Cause then we get into
That would be a
infinite
lot.
permutations of options.
But at some point, pretty quickly, we need to get there, because I do think there, at this stage, it's not too detailed to say town owns it, it's status quo, but town doesn't fix it, town doesn't do anything, nobody does anything to it, or very minor, or the town owns it and the town maintains it long-term. Those are two, to me, usage options. And I get it's still the museum, but at some point, we very quickly need to get to, that other piece, but.
And that's kind of my thought. My thought is that those are two different, outcomes, although I'm not the dictator here, so.
But just to throw out, if it wasn't historic, you could say, well, we'll throw the historical society out and we'll turn it into a town library.
Absolutely.
So then is it a town,
Yes,
but
town
then you're
library,
going
that's
back,
an
is it a
option.
you know, the section, separate, what, town library or a private library?
Yeah,
I guess,
that's absolutely an option, actually.
I'm good with however you wanna do it.
Yeah.
I always like to keep Tyler happy, because if I don't.
I know, and I really don't want to annoy him.
Tina, you were
This
trying
is
to
fine.
jump in.
I can-
was,
I
but
can
I
make it
think
work
if
in the
I
minutes.
say it might be mixing it up again.
But give it a shot.
But I'm just gonna say it. So, the town sells it to the Historical Society for $1,
Mhm.
but the money that is already allotted for the use of the building gets put into an account that the Historical Society has access to use to fix the building with, and only fix the building with.
I think that's two different things. I think the outcome would be the town sells it to the historical society, or the town essentially gives it to the
Right,
historical.
yeah.
Society. And then we can talk about the finances.
After,
differently.
yeah. There could be, it gives it to us with no money, or it gives it to us with money set aside for us to use at our own discretion.
just the 31,000 is
Yes,
there, nothing more.
Correct. And
So
then
you never
we
get
write
any more.
grants, we do the fundraising.
Right.
Because in all reality, the Historical Society shouldn't be writing grants for the town for fundraising. So it would have to be the Historical Societies to write grants to get money for the building.
And grants would be tough for the town to get. Much
Exactly.
easier for the historical society.
Exactly.
Some of them are actually, having been doing grants now for a few years, for West Durham. Some of them do have a municipality piece to it. So I was surprised to see that. It's not always that it goes to a private, like Friends of the West Durham Methodist Church. It's some of them, if the town owns it, the town can apply for money for a historic building or for, I don't know, whatever, for a school library, whatever the grants are for.
And I was thinking there's also crowdfunding. I mean, I think that would be an attractive project for crowdfunding.
But Emily's gonna jump in very shortly and say.
Yeah,
we're-
no,
we're
I-
too-
I'm not making that up.
I don't even know anymore.
We're supposed to be brainstorming ideas.
I'm just writing everything down
You know,
now.
I'm just
Carry on.
trying to
I'm
come
gonna
up
go
with-
with gilded and gold.
Yeah,
We can do
okay.
gold.
Right.
Can we do silver or platinum?
Well, I think another
Like
thing
shine,
that,
like the crown.
another thing that I've heard people previously in the town government say was to use that space for town government. That was another option.
Mhm.
I know that it was, at the time, assuming that the building could be moved, but perhaps that's still an option for them.
I think that's certainly an option that we ought to explore. I think tear it down is an option.
By the way, don't shoot.
The messenger?
No, and there's no, I
We're
mean,
brainstorming.
yes, we're
Yeah,
not
no,
saying,
that's why I
we're
said
not
the
saying that
library.
these are
Not that
outcomes
we
we
ever do
want.
library.
We're just trying to come up with all the possible outcomes.
I think someone once said like, collaborative workspaces, turn it into like cubicle farm or something.
Yeah,
I think there is money for,
That's brainstorming, all right?
there
Yeah,
is
yeah,
money for,
yeah.
to fix things up.
I will say sell it.
Yep.
I don't want without any details on who you sell it to, but
Yep.
just,
Just put it on the
that's an
market.
option that's out there, just
Yep.
sell it.
absolutely.
I would say move it, and I'm thinking about the river part there. We didn't really explore that, whether that makes sense or not, or take it down to pieces. To me, that place is a bad location for any kind of serious public use. And I think it's gonna limit whatever, I mean, if it's gonna stay like a little, once a month something happens there, then that's maybe not a big deal, but if you really wanna expand the vision of what you're gonna do with that building, it's gotta be moved, in my opinion. But, so I'd still say move it.
Move it. Certainly an option.
We'll have to find somebody other than Cobb.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, he's a guy, I think, who picks things up and moves them. There's people who disassemble things and move them.
And I've talked to a couple people, Bill Simon, who's been around forever, I said, maybe put down my Eureka, because we had talked about things. It's a great idea, he'd love to see that happen, I don't know, town member, but of course, probably not gonna happen, I get that, but that's,
What we're thinking about. And if you use it for the government, it's a whole lot cheaper than building new town hall. I mean, just moving it at a couple $100,000 and putting bathrooms in and making it into a, meeting room or something like that is not, and then leave Eureka for, something else. But that's, now I've got, I'm sorry.
How about sell it and move it?
Sure. Well,
Or
sell
move it and sell it,
Sell
whichever
it.
order you,
I
there's
think
two
we do
different
that.
options.
After you sell it, you have no real
They can
input
put it
in
wherever
what
they want.
happens.
Right, but if you don't sell the land, you only sell the building, you do?
You can't do that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you could sell the building to someone to remove from there.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Move it,
Assuming.
sell it, and have them move it, like,
And then the town is left with that lot.
yeah,
That's certainly an option.
Or-
If anybody wants to buy it.
move it, and then sell it, rather than turning it into a government place. But put it on a private, if there were a lot close enough, that you didn't have to go through 18 sets of wires, and it didn't cost $200,000, just move the building
Well, that's what
and
it's
then sell it.
saying about taking it the other direction.
The other direction
It might
drops
be-
probably 15 wires, give or take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
we're,
I mean, if you disassemble it, you don't have to move
Yeah,
it.
well, that's,
Right.
I mean, people do that all the time. Is that correct? Do the
Yeah,
historic preservation?
I don't even know. I need a cookie.
The
You're gonna be behind me holding a knife to my throat.
the opposite of move, which would be like fill in some of the hill, expand the spacing massively for parking, turn into a recreational center, buy the lot next to it, clear all the trees so you have line of sight in all directions and
Love it.
go crazy.
So you
Love
buy-
it.
So you
you
putting
buy
that in?
Candace's house?
Yep.
You can't cut too many trees down towards the river, that's the problem. There's these rules.
is there a
But
lot
you
next
can cut.
Fill in the road,
Is
just,
there-
that's
is there a
not.
lot next to it?
No, well, Candy,
Yes.
so Candy DeCipio
You
owns
said
the
buy the
land
lot next to
behind
it.
it.
But we're not talking about logistical issues right now, but I agree with you.
So there is already an owner behind the building.
Okay.
So it would mean buying the property toward the river if that owner wanted, because the,
Talking about
it's
logistics,
just,
those are
I know,
brainstorms.
it's just a
Right,
little,
right,
it's just a
exactly.
little rectangle, and then, I'll use Candy's name, Candy's property is the house and it runs along the river behind it, so
You'd have to buy it.
it means buying a piece of
Not
property.
necessarily the end of the world, but
That's
it's
your
for
recommendation.
recreation.
Yeah, or that's your possibility.
Oh, a kayak rental.
I got another one. Okay, so, and it was Cobb's idea, so lift it, put a full foundation underneath it, so that you can have a kitchen under there. It would be huge, you have a furnace, and then you'd have a hole underneath that could be used like the Eureka. The museum's up the top, but then you have a place for like archival stuff, but you have a huge room down there. They have parties in,
In the basement.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but like
Rental space.
a nice finished area, you could rent out the basement, just like they rent out the Eureka.
So hers with an expansion
Yep,
possibility.
yep, with the foundation under, full foundation under it.
And we're just gonna, are we gonna sift through these ideas?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
because we're not gonna
We're not just
send all
gonna-
these to the selectmen,
No, no,
are
I
we?
think-
Okay, good.
Job's done after tonight.
I'm like,
If we're
okay.
gonna send them all, I've got 1,000 ideas.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that we'll prioritize them.
Okay.
We'll make a suggestion.
Yeah. Because if we were going to turn them into town offices, then I would think it would behoove us to have some contractor come in and say, this is how much it's gonna cost
Yeah,
to turn
that's
that into
exactly-
this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Be a lot cheaper to put in cubicles like they do
I
for the school.
think it would be cheaper to
Portables.
build a new building.
Some
It's always
portables.
cheaper to build a new building.
Give it to another nonprofit.
We cover the one, give it to the, just give it to the, we cover that historically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I guess the question would be is if the town was gonna do that, would they need to ask other private organizations in town to maybe put a bid on it, you know? Rather than, can
They
they
didn't do
just
that
give it
with
to the
the church.
Historical Society, or can they give it maybe the,
Well, that was a good idea.
yeah, I mean,
They
but,
didn't do that with the West Methodist, they just,
no, they
did
did,
it.
but they can,
But they could, I mean, they.
They just took a vote at the
Yeah.
select board and said, because I hounded them enough so they weren't trying to get rid of me, but, they just took a vote at the select board and said, if you can get seed money as a grant to prove that you're actually gonna do something, we will sell it to you for $1.
Mhm.
They didn't offer it to anyone that I'm aware of.
Mhm.
but they have, of course, that select, part of that select board is gone, but at the town meeting, they had, when I had asked if they would just willy-nilly sell that building, that I was assured that that wouldn't happen.
The Union Church building?
Yes, because the last item, and then the last item at the town meeting is that the select board is given the right to sell any town
Mhm.
properties.
Yes.
And for the last couple of years, I have always gotten up and said, but I don't agree with that because of the Union Church and because of the Methodist Church. I didn't think they should have just been able to do that. And they had, I've been told that, you know, they wouldn't do that. So, anyway.
We've got selling.
Art gallery? Or, you know, people that do weaving or wool or, you know, crafty place?
You mean a town?
Flea market?
A town-owned art gallery or something like that?
Guess so, yeah.
so sort of what it is now.
Check with Lisbon on how well their town-owned art gallery is doing.
Yeah, I know.
The old gas station.
Yeah.
Although I do
Okay.
know an artist who'd be interested in hanging her stuff there.
I mean, if the town wanted to move the building, it would open up a lot of possibilities for things like that.
Yeah.
You could have a community space, you know, the office thing, but not where it is in my opinion.
I think, like, we've talked about moving and how unsafe it is, but also we are waiting from MDOT, and hopefully they'll have some suggestions on how to make that entrance or exit more safe.
Yeah.
And I feel like we all know it's not an ideal place to look into, and in my opinion, it's, if we think it's the right usage, it's better, our time is better spent problem solving how to make that a safe entrance and exit, rather than talking about, like, things we just are ignorant of at this time.
And there's a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Like, we can fill up the entire recommendation for the select board with things we don't know yet,
Right.
and we keep repeating some of the same things, so I think
Right.
we should,
Right.
like, move on from those notes.
All right, anybody else have any other ideas?
So if I can just whittle this down a little bit, my understanding is that the options are for the town to keep it, for the Historical Society to have it for $1, for the Historical Society to have it for nothing,
Well, those are both the same.
or to sell it to a private person or organization,
Or move.
or to give it, or
to
to
give it
give
to
it. Well,
What have you got there?
I
It seemed to me there were more, a couple more maybe.
I can, do you want me to go through what I've
if you
listed?
don't mind.
Do you mind?
I don't know. So I think most of these are in the camp of town owns a building, town sells it to the historical society, town sells it to a private entity. It's kept as a historical museum with whoever physically owns the building at the time. Town library, money is allotted to the Durham Historical Society, the 31K currently there, no more, turns into a town store. We do something with crowdfunding. It's used for town government. We tear it down. Collaborative workspace / cubicle farm, sold to a private entity, which is it. Move it to the river park and take it down in pieces. upgrade to modern, interior, which is, I think, what John was saying after moving. I didn't really fully get that one, so we'll go back to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably getting into the weeds a little bit too much. I mean, my guess is you have to upgrade it no matter what, if you're gonna keep it wherever it is. Or if you don't sell it to somebody, they'd have to upgrade it.
Sell the building only, Durham keeps the land, turn it into a recreational area, fill in the hill, buy lots around it, kayak rental, lift it,
No,
put it
no,
up.
no, no, I was like,
That was certainly
brainstorming.
mentioned.
Lift it, make a full foundation with kitchen, archival space, bathroom, parties, and it could possibly be a rental space. Give it to another nonprofit, which is similar to what the select board did with the Methodist Church. Art gallery, artisan location, which is the basket wool thing, or a flea market. Yeah.
And I would say we could probably roll some of those up into like the last couple you mentioned there. Town keeps it, town
Like
figures
some
out what they're
commercial.
If they don't give it to historical, then the town figures out what goes in there. Flea market, art gallery, you know, if they wanna have a public space. Same with the library. Is it a library? Is it a recreation center? Whatever it is, that's to me is, we don't need to say library, we just say town use for
In the
other things.
actual minutes, I'll probably organize these better, but I'm still gonna leave everything on there as just ideas because
Yeah,
they
great,
were there.
great. And I see it as like a flow chart almost.
Turn it back into a church.
yes,
Absolutely.
You
Well, that
could.
would be a private organization. I
Yeah,
think.
would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, did the town ever buy it legally from whoever the,
How did the town acquire it?
They would have bought it from the Baptist, because it was a Baptist church,
I think it was in there.
so
what was in there?
the
I thought it was.
Baptist owned
I'm
it,
trying to read it now.
and then it went abandoned,
It was
and,
deeded over to the town. It
yeah.
doesn't say they bought
Okay.
it. Just said it was,
Yeah,
you're,
deeded
you're
over.
very good,
I
very
don't
good history. with
think,
it.
I don't think we paid an amount of money. We could
Yeah,
probably go
yeah,
back on the deeds, probably $1,
Yeah.
my guess, $10, I don't know. Somebody bought a pew for $10, I found the deed for that. I mean, it's just, yeah, yeah.
Any other thoughts that we want to enshrine in the minutes? All right, great. I think that was productive. I really did. And I appreciate Tyler keeping on top of it. And I appreciate Emily trying to police the process a little bit. Let's move on. Lois, did we discuss this already, or did we discuss this to your satisfaction?
I don't know if I'm satisfied, we discussed it. So, I think I heard, I don't know if it was Neil, somebody said, that it didn't go to a vote. So,
What didn't go to a vote?
the, using the money for a purpose other than what,
Oh, in this committee?
yes,
It did not.
okay. I didn't think it had, but I might have missed it. I just, it feels to me like that money belongs to the town selectmen to figure it out. And I just wanna make sure that we aren't at any point saying, we want that $10,000 for an assessment. Maybe even going to this select board.
I mean, I think it depends on what the town meeting decided. really.
Yes, and I think that's what I will find out on Monday,
Yeah,
and I'll share with you when I know it.
awesome.
And the other half of that is, what is the $20,000, 21,000? Is that usable? I mean, I don't know what we would need money for, if we're comfortable with, you know, getting estimates or whatever from people like COP or whatever it may be. But if we really feel like we need to spend $1,000 or have somebody go in and do a real structural, really deep dive on structural or whatever it may be, that may cost the town $2,000 or $3,000, and then we would go to, we go to the selectmen and say, to give you a really good answer, we need to do a structural engineer assessment.
Yeah.
And we think it'll cost us $3,000, $5,000. will you approve spending that? So whether it comes out of that 20,000, or if it can, the 10,000, or the town just says, we've got that. I mean, they have funds to do that kind of work, and they can approve. So I don't think we should just say we're not gonna spend money until we've had a chance to look at some of the options.
Yeah.
But if the 10,000 was for the structural repair of the sill, then, that 10,000 may be sacred.
I'll get back to you Monday as soon as I can find out.
Can you also check though with if there is another place they put the money, the other 21,000, it should be
Yes, there is.
in a place just for the historical society, just for the
Renovations.
historical renovation of the building.
It'd probably say Union Church in the budget, I can't remember from last year's
It
budget.
does.
And
I
it
think
should,
it
and it
does.
got
It may not
whittled,
say-
was at 62,
Yeah,
right? And
there
it got
was a big
whittled down with
66, yeah.
various things to
The roof,
21.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, yes, that money, my understanding in talking to Jerry was that that money is earmarked. That 21,000 is earmarked for the Union Church renovations, or they've been using it for repairs, not for renovation. There's a difference in terminology there, so when they put in the walkway, the tar, that was not a renovation, because it wouldn't have met the standards. It was a repair, I guess, it was a new thing. So that $21,000 is set aside. The 10 is where we've got to figure out what the wording was.
And hopefully, it should be clear, I hope it's clear.
I hope so.
I think the
I
idea.
know what I wanted.
I know.
I think the idea of one of our recommendations being a structural engineer, but could that come from the capital funds that the town has?
I think that would be up to the
capital
selectmen to
funds?
just say, we need $3,000.
But I mean, that could be one of our recommendations but I guess that doesn't fall under uses, that perhaps a structural engineer does.
Well, I think if we want to do that, I think we probably do that by September and try to get that into this budget cycle. And the selectmen would figure out how to do it if they want to, and if they don't, they don't.
And I thought maybe if we want to do it, but you do it even earlier, and you go to them and ask, I'd pick a number, 3,000, whatever it is, and just say, to really give you a good answer
Yeah.
on what it's gonna cost to move it, or the church as it exists, pick it up, lift it, rebuild, whatever it's gonna be, we need to know and I think the cop said, yeah, look at the joists underneath look good, and so maybe just a simple, the guy may be able to very quickly go in and say, yeah, look at this building's in great shape, except for that corner, or, hey, the rafters they're gonna need work, or whatever it may be. He should also be able to say, look, here's what it would cost you to put in toilets, here's what it would cost you, estimate, what it would cost you to make this truly ADA accessible. And I mean, just a ballpark, so that everything other than pick it up and put a new foundation, here's your other cost. 'Cause it sounds like that, I don't know, that 100,000 that you were dealing with in 2017, did that include foundation work, or was that strict?
I can look while you guys are talking, I can pull it up on my phone.
Yeah, I mean, when you buy a new house, you have a housing inspector.
Exactly.
And my thought was, we may want to have somebody who does that kind of thing, go, inspect the place.
Well, we kind of have that,
Yeah.
but
Right.
I mean, I don't know what Chris Kloss's true skill sets are. I mean,
And he's no longer there.
right, but I mean,
Well, how far does that go, how far back?
so this was 2015, but one of his recommendations was that they should have a structural engineer take a look at the building.
Oh.
So, for $300, he did this, so maybe somebody else, but I don't know what his
Structural might be a little bit
qualifications
more, but depending on what you ask him to do, I'm just picking 3,000 out of the air, but I would hope that we'd be able to have him come in, and then he would say, new joists on the floor, that's gonna cost you 50,000, and new rafters are gonna cost you another 50,000, and fixing the siding is bad in many places, that's gonna cost you, and doing what you gotta do for ADA is gonna, so then you could just say, because that would be my question, is a citizen or a selectman say, all you talked about was pick it up, rebuild it, put it down, my
Is that
barn
all it needs?
yeah, my barn is a perfect example. I'm gonna pick it up, lift it, and do something, and then my wife keeps coming up with, well, I'd like a door here, I'd like, you know, and I'm hoping that there aren't a whole bunch of, and not picking on her, but, you know, I don't know that when they lift it, they won't find other issues underneath.
Yeah, and
You
I-
guys dealt with that probably with your bar, is it, you know, what was, is probably 25% more.
And a skilled
Always
trained
costs
eye
more
may
than-
see things that we don't,
Yeah.
that you guys don't.
Just
Certainly.
one thing I would like to point out, the last time Paula pointed out that there was a list of recognized renovators. If we can find a structural engineer who's got some experience with
Old building.
with buildings that are on the registry, because that's a different set of standards because of our ordinances.
I have a list.
So we, oh, excellent.
Is- I mean,
So-
is it-
And I may too,
Oh,
but,
structural engineering?
My husband works for OSHA, and
Okay,
I
wow.
have connections all over the
Yeah,
place.
great, great.
So
Yeah.
that-
But I'm
that's
not sure
important.
that it's all that, I mean, what's different about it? If we're gonna, if 3,000 becomes 6,000,
Yeah,
is the $3,000 guy okay? I mean, it's, to me, joist to joist, rafters are rafters, bad siding is bad siding.
Yeah. Tia, would you be willing to pursue that and,
I have it on my phone, so I can share it with you guys tomorrow if you want. I'll just,
and maybe contact one or two of them
Yeah.
and see
What they
What
what it
charge.
would cost?
yeah,
to have them come?
absolutely. Yep,
That
we
would
can
be
definitely
great.
do that.
Does Les Fossil do that? Because he is certainly one of the experts in the historical building field.
Absolutely.
Would he,
he's not a structural engineer, I don't believe. And for people who don't know who he is, huh?
So he's not a structural engineer, but he sure would have.
He
opinions.
definitely would
He
have. I know.
definitely would have.
I know him too.
For those of you who don't know him, he's doing the Abyssinian Church in Portland, and has been now for, I think, 3 years. They just got a $100 million
They
grant or
did,
something
yeah,
like that,
yeah,
some
yeah.
huge amount,
Yeah.
so they can finish their work, but, yeah, so, would he have an opinion on what should be done? Absolutely. Yes, and he can quickly look at something and say, that needs to be repaired,
right.
because he did that at no charge for the Western Methodist Church. He came in and went,
Yeah, but then
It's
we need a
really-
written report and, you know.
And I did
bulk
think
that.
we just wanna make sure we don't, you know, perfection can be the enemy of good enough.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we start getting bids that instead of 150,000, we're asking for, you know, for a level of expertise, for somebody's coming and say, man, if I was doing this, I'd do all of that, and it's 300,000, so.
but that's where,
It would probably be worth asking Jerry or the select board if if this is even doable or not. Because my understanding is the select board wanted ideas to present to the town meeting to what the town would be willing to do.
Right, but I think if we need this information to make an informed recommendation to them, I think they might pony up a little bit of money for it.
Yeah, we could ask for it on a trail.
Yeah. Well,
And the town has,
I think if we have some concrete information, we say, you know, there's a structural engineer who will come out and do it for $2,000. Is that something you guys might be willing to entertain? I think that's the way.
and the town has a structural engineer they've used before.
Oh, do they?
then
Yeah,
we
I mean,
should-
according to Calvin, he may not be, I don't mean to point at you, but he may not be, you're gonna say, well, if you do this to architect, you know, historical standards, but the basic structural stuff, I think, hopefully he'd be able to do it. We can ask,
So you're saying if the sills are bad, it doesn't really matter whether it's a structural engineer or a
the joists are
structural
bad, or,
historical structural
Yeah.
engineer. I mean, I think it does for like the outside, there are certain things, but I'm
Yeah, I think-
kinda with you, I mean, a
It matters
beam under a
what you're gonna
building is a
do
beam,
about it.
yeah.
because the structural engineer, correct me if I'm wrong, is not gonna do the work. He's gonna tell us what the work needs
Exactly,
to
and
be.
give us an
So
estimate.
then the RFP then says, and we need new joists and blah, 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 and here's the list. And then that gets sent out for bids, and the bidders come in,
approving the town, assuming the town approves
yeah,
And it would-
100,000 or
Got it.
200,000.
The RFP would refer to the National National Register. report.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Whoever
okay.
Whoever did the
Yeah.
eventual
I just
bid
need
would
to make
have
sure I
that.
have the
So,
sequence of it.
So any engineer structurally could give us the ball.
Yeah,
For the structural.
Strongly disagree with any structural engineer, especially with old buildings, like, there's just countless stories of modern structural engineers who expect to see 16 on center studs going up the wall, come in and see a timber frame, and they're like, this is gonna fall down any minute. It's like, no, it's not, it stood there for 350 years.
Yeah.
And just preservation, structural engineers are more aware of these practices, whether it's like, they'll be able to tell from how the lath and plaster is cracking what that means, whereas a modern one may not see that. I think it behooves us at this, especially for the point where we're looking at what the problems are, to spend the money up front to get a proper evaluation, and then later down the line, working with the engineer, we could use, say, specific carpenters who may not be preservation, who are given specific guidance, but even there, I would always turn towards the
No, I-
preservation
I
side of
agree.
things.
so there are preservation structural engineers.
Yes.
Yes, we
Right,
had one
Tia-
come to our house
Tia's gonna-
years
Okay.
ago.
And there's, yeah, I got a list of
Okay.
them. I was
I just-
actually
I don't know
scheduled to
those.
meet with one back in 2017, 18, and then they told me to not do that, because we needed this committee.
Well, are you guys happy with the one who did your house?
Yes, she is fantastic. She talked to our doors, she's very weird.
She talked to your doors.
We have
Hey.
all the
She's very
original doors,
passionate.
she had full conversations with them.
I mean, if you have contact with her, and she's familiar with the town,
Yeah, yeah.
Take bids
If
on
you're-
structural.
I know,
She's,
right?
Yeah, no,
she's
I-
looked at other
not if it's under a certain amount of money.
She's come out
so.
here in the past
Yeah, she's
to
been
other
here
buildings,
before.
yeah.
If
The
you don't
site
mind
visits.
contacting her, see if she's interested in
What it would cost.
what ballpark she,
How much?
Who does she work for?
Criterium, I believe is the name. She just did like half a day at our house and it was like $400, which,
sounds pretty reasonable.
I mean, I assume
So
for
we
doing a
can't- we can't do
full,
that.
yeah, for doing a very full evaluation would be significantly more, but we were like, we didn't need a structural engineer stamp of approval or anything, we just wanted to be like,
What are
should we be
gonna do?
worried? Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
This is gonna blow it up.
So, just real quick, so the proposal that we got, it was from Maine Dry Stone, back in 2018. He wrote this based on the report from Maine Preservation. So he took all of the suggestions from Chris Kloss and then did his bid, met Linda, and walked around the building. So the bid at that point was 98,000. But that did include, basically building a retaining wall out behind the building so that it couldn't wash away anymore, replacing the whole entire foundation, and I believe I saw something about putting, blocks back on the front. Yeah, remove entire concrete block portion of the foundation from beneath the structure, install new engineered lumber joists and hangers. They talked about fixing the sill, powder spray for post beetles, pour footings, install poured concrete on the back of the wall and the building. And it talked about the sill, replacing the corner, excavating 12 inches below grade for drainage, install newly built access door with ventilation screen on the back of the building. I mean, this was extremely detailed. Loam and seat, he was gonna do everything that needed to be done, including like a whole new foundation, for 98,000. Sills, and putting the retaining wall, and the up above. So that was a pretty good deal back then.
And then COVID happened.
I know,
And it all,
yeah.
You know, yeah.
Yeah. Chris Tangway was his name.
And maybe it's a combination of your person kind of saying, and then coming, it doesn't sound to me like it's gotten better in the last 5 or 6 years.
No. And, you know, he might be good if the town goes back out to bid, to reach out to him since he's familiar
Mhm.
and already provided something before. I mean, nothing's really, the inside of the building hasn't changed since then. There isn't any more cracks or dings. I mean, the roof leaked, but they fixed the roof, so,
But you're gonna jack it up and.
things will move, yeah.
But
Doesn't do too much.
All right,
No, knock on wood.
so I appreciate you guys' willingness to do that. Yeah, I appreciate your willingness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get something.
If you can't get her to come out, let me know, and I'll start going down the list.
She said she's gonna work till she's 72. and
Oh,
that was a
perfect.
little while out.
How old is she? We're good?
71 and a half.
Yeah,
Exactly.
She was 66. She said she's
okay.
they're gonna have to pull her cold corpse out of a crawl space, and that'll be that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's awesome. All right, let's move on to, item number 6, public comments. There's no public here, so.
Anyone? No one?
Next meeting date, 8/17 and 8/31, are those dates that
No,
work?
we had decided on Thursdays, but,
I think that was the consensus. Does that work for you?
no, I can't be here on the 17th. But I didn't know we had decided on it. Yeah, I can't be here on the 17th.
Maybe Candy can take your place.
I can be here on the Thursdays, I have no problems.
Is it just the problem with the 17th? You could make
Yeah, I
that?
can't make the Thursdays.
I think if it works for everybody else, I think we may have to
That's fine,
forge ahead.
that's fine.
I appreciate that.
Same time, 6 o'clock?
Let's do the same time,
And
6
then are you
o'clock?
gonna do the 31st, or do we know?
Yes, so we will plan to do the 31st as well.
And what will we be talking about next?
My thought was, unless anybody else has an idea, but my thought was to show up over at the church and kind of look around. Because
Oh.
I've never done that.
Yep.
And I would love to have you guys who have some knowledge of it, show me.
Meet here and then go there, or meet there?
I would meet there, so I don't have to
At
get
6
in and out of
o'clock.
the car, yeah.
Okay.
For which day?
The 17th.
17th, okay?
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure I
Putting
write
capital
that down.
letters here.
At the church. Church meeting, at the
So
church.
it is not ADA compliant, there's
No,
no
no.
ramp or anything?
No,
We'll pick you up and carry you in.
it's not that hard. I'm just a little slip of a guy.
And we're not gonna come here, just stay, whatever we do at the church will be.
I think we'll go over to the church and, look around for a while. I don't know that we need to,
We need to look around
Come
the
back.
back or around the outside
Mhm.
for sure.
Yep.
I mean, it'll take a little while. I think it's well worth doing unless anybody thinks it's not.
Before Neil says that, I'm gonna say, just when you pull in, be careful.
Yeah. I suggest,
Mostly when you pull out.
yeah, when you pull in, it's easy, just pull in straight, but when we leave, we usually go out in a U.
Yeah.
So that we don't back out. So the first person go, and then we just kind of follow. So we drive along the grass and
Maybe I'll
pull out.
go around, so I'm
Yeah.
coming
Right?
the right.
You might actually be able to you might be able to go around the church. That would be a really good idea. Make a drive
Yeah.
around the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get there first, so I can back.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Good, so I
Does
was at the
anybody have
church, so I
any-
know
I have a
that.
final comment,
excellent.
or final from me. Just informationally, our bylaws included, because I inserted it, by the committee to provide cost estimates for all our suggested options. They didn't say that, but I felt like we needed to do that.
Well, I think that's necessary for them to make the decision. I'm putting myself in their position. If I got a bunch of just naked recommendations with no cost attached, it would not be very meaningful to me as a select person.
Well, the real key is, when that's step one, I guess the question would be, what are we gonna present who? So is it just, hey, town meeting, we wanna talk to you about this, or hey, town meeting, we want a decision to go forward with this? And
Well, I
then,
think that's
it's
up to
like,
the
is it
select-
an article and
Yeah, yeah.
public hearings and all that other kind?
Yeah,
Tyler's waiting to have some more public hearings.
yeah. Well, and if we weren't attaching values, we would all go for the gold-plated Taj Mahal.
Mhm.
Their goal was to present the town meeting with something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Is that what they're planning
Yeah,
to
they
do?
wanted to present the town meeting with something to make a decision on.
I don't think they have a lot of power, as best I can tell, the selectmen. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I think that they'll do a warrant article and it'll
it's
go
gonna cost
around.
more than $31,000. They don't have much, no offense to them, but they don't have a lot of power.
Yeah,
You know, if we wanna, whatever we wanna come up with, spend $150,000, it's gonna have to go. So you're gonna have to sell it to
So
them.
their warrant article could say something about, not worded correctly, that, to see what the town's, if the town would approve, say, $100,000 initially to upgrade to get the building.
Maybe not anything more, but the town, the consensus of the town is to, lift it, put it back down, sell it, turn it into a taco stand, whatever it may be, but, you know, whatever that recommendation is, and then spend more time, you know, going out and getting more detailed information and bids and stuff.
So they need this information by when?
December.
Yeah, I think they told us December.
I thought that the budget stuff was starting
September.
September. If this is a budget piece, do they not need that
Two
in
different
order
things, I
to
think.
talk about the budget?
I think they're two different things. I think the vote that would occur at town meeting,
Yes,
they need the information in December for,
yes.
would be for some time in the future spending. I think the September deadline is for this, budget cycle.
So if there were a warrant vote that said, whatever you just said, the $100,000 for repairs to the building to bring it up to code, that would not be for the time between April 2024 and April 2025. It would just be a vote on that, and then they'd have to come up with $100,000 in 2025? I don't know.
Well, it depends on how they do the warrant article, but I think they would, probably, they would have the amount of money as a line item to raise and appropriate X amount of money to do this with the Union Church, and then that would be taken out of the taxes, in the next fiscal year.
But we should ask some questions, maybe, but I thought they wanted to get this in the CIP process.
Is that September?
I don't remember.
Yeah, no, he said on listening to the meeting the other night, Jerry said he was meeting with, the CIP like today maybe, so the CIP part.
It's two, I think it's two
improvement.
different things. They want our report by December so they can craft a warrant.
Right.
But I think if, for example, if we wanna pay for a structural engineer, I think we probably need to have that information to them by September.
I would agree with that. If there's things that, and I may have misread it, misunderstood too. I thought 2024, we were gonna go in with, here's the use, here's what we think it's gonna cost us, and then spend 24 getting to a final number, but that's probably a good question for what Jerry thinks the selectmen are looking for.
Yeah, that's what I remember too.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a 2-year process.
Oh.
And then it would go to the budget committee in the fall of 2024 and be approved at town meeting in 2025. Okay.
I thought we were
So-
done in December.
So,
I
so
may be
Neil,
wrong.
so it can't go on a warrant that says, you know, the town, you know, wants to lift the building, it's gonna cost $100,000 to lift it and put a foundation under it?
We could recommend that. That would be what I wanted to do. I'd take a short circuit the whole thing. I'd say, let's recommend to the select board, this is what they do. $100,000 at the town meeting to fix the foundation permanently,
Yeah.
or whatever it is.
That's what I
Or,
thought our
or sell
term
it. If they're gonna sell it, they're not gonna wanna do that.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know how they're gonna go about doing that. Are they gonna ask the town to select 1 out of 3? You know,
I see, that's
Would
what I
they do
thought
a
the
survey?
December thing was, because
Would
they
that-
really put the final touches on the budget by 1 year of sitting in meetings. There's 2 presentations, they split the budgets and articles in half in January. And so Jerry needs to get his fire and people, public work, and special articles, funding
Ahead of time?
articles.
So like when they want a new snowplow truck, does that, you're saying that would have to be in this September? To get it in for the town meeting in
Yeah,
April?
Yes,
Or-
December,
Or it could be December?
yeah.
So
Except they're
if,
starting earlier this year, they're starting
Trying
now.
to,
but doesn't necessarily mean they have to have it.
plow truck is in the CIP process, so that's in queue.
Oh, okay.
I just know that our charge is to do these 3 things by December.
Okay.
Anything else is extraneous.
last minute.
Not true. All right, anything else before we wrap it up? Thank you. So anybody, it's
Move to
just
adjourn.
8 o'clock. Anybody
Second.
second that? It's not debatable, so let's take a vote. All in favor of adjourning? Anyone opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
These is extras.
I think the rest.
I should have said something weird. But I guess it's not really relevant. Tia, would you send me your presentations in digital form, so I can just put them up with the minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great idea.
Town website.
What's the Northern stuff that you were gonna do?
Yes.
You ever reached out?
I did.
Well, thankfully,
Yes.
the museum's already sold.
You sent me
It's been that
camera
long.
pictures of it? But I did reach out to them. I haven't heard anything. I'm gonna reach back out early next week. 'Cause I think last time I reached out on like a Wednesday, so maybe it got buried or something.
Yeah.
I reached out to New Orleans and